judge him not. For I came not to judge the world, but to redeem the world. He that rejects me and receives not my words has one that judges him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. This is the commandments and the Torah of Elohim. And we see in John 1:1, where it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. This, and the Word was Elohim, is something that we very, very much need to understand, that it doesn't line up that Jesus was God. The Word was Elohim. Elohim means mighty one. It means judge. It means ruler that can bring redemption and rest. That the Word is our judge that has the authority to grant us redemption and rest, or not. The choice is ours. So, he that receives not my word has one that judges him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. For I have not spoken of myself, but the Father which sent me, he gave me a commandment, what I should say and what I should speak. He dictated what Yahshua would say and what Yahshua would speak. It was Elohim that composed the Torah. Yahshua was the Torah that was made flesh. What he spoke was the direct commandments of Elohim according to the word of Elohim. And I know that his commandment is life everlasting. Whatsoever I speak, therefore, even as the Father said unto me, so I speak. Where is this commandment of everlasting life found? Find it in Torah. So that it is clear that what Yahshua spoke and the instructions that he gave came from the Torah and the commandment of Yahweh Elohim. So no man, rabbi, or church father has any authority to change anything that is related to them. In fact, being from the Torah of Elohim, we must then consider, finally, Devarim 13:1. And this is 13:1 in the Hebrew Torah. In King Jimmy and all our English-based Bibles, it's going to be Devarim or Deuteronomy 12:32. 12:32 doesn't exist in the Torahs that you've compiled. But it says this, all this word which I command you, that you shall observe to do, you shall not add thereto or diminish from it. Don't add anything to it. Don't take anything away from it. So consider this verse spoken to the remnant by Yahshua in Revelation 22:14 that says, blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the city gates. To not do his commandments, to not keep his commandments, puts us outside of the Garden of Eden. And in that case, consider what's found outside of Gan Eden, or found outside of the city gates. It says, but the ones not there are the dogs and the sorcerers and the fornicators and the murderers and the idolaters and everyone loving a lie and doing falsehood. Okay? These are the people that are outside. Paul tells Timothy about the same people. He goes through a whole list of what these people are, idolaters and those that are involved with lying lips and harlotry and all this. He says they had a form of reverence. They had a form of righteousness, but they deny the very power of it. There's no power in what they're teaching. What did the people say about Yahshua? He said he's not like the scribes and the Pharisees. He teaches with authority, whereas the scribes and the Pharisees lack the authority. So this is something to keep in mind. So, with all that in mind, there are a great many more scriptures that drive home the point that we are to keep Torah and not change it in any way. Every chance there is a whole whopping bunch of scriptures that say exactly this. Okay? Even in the writings of Paul, he says this, the same guy that New Testament folks try to use to say that the law has been abolished. We don't fall into that Old Testament stuff. There's a whole bunch of scriptures that prove this. So with this idea in mind, we can proceed to look at some doctrines and decrees that are man-conceived and are in no way supported by Torah, or the Torah of Yahweh Elohim, or by our Master Yahshua. We can begin with one of the most important subjects, which is Shabbat. The law of first mention concerning Shabbat is found prior to the planting of Eden and the formation of the Adam to be placed there. And we find this in Bereshit 2, 1 through 3, that says, "And the heavens and the earth were finished, and the host of them. And on the seventh day Elohim finished his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and set it apart, because that in it he rested from all his work which Elohim in creating had made." This is in Bereshit, before it talks about that he planted a garden eastward in Eden. This is found before he formed the man of the dust of the ground and blew into his nostrils the breath of life and picked him up and placed him in Eden. So it's very important. This law of first mention precedes Eden and Adam. It was there from the beginning. Okay? In these verses, we read that Elohim set Shabbat, the seventh day, apart from the other days, and he blessed it. He created Shabbat for humankind to set aside this time with him to find rest and nourishment in him. These are two ideas that are found in the letter Zion. Zion is the seventh letter of the alphabet, whereas Zion means weapon. It comes from a root zan, that means nourishment. And 7 reminds us of the seventh day, which is Shabbat. It is the rest that Elohim has established for us. So within the Zion, within Shabbat, we are literally taken back to Gan Eden every seventh day. And we spend time with Elohim within the garden, surrounded by his hedge of protection, nourished by his word, and we find rest in him and with him. This is the importance of Shabbat. Yahshua himself said that the Sabbath was made for man, not the man for the Sabbath. By saying this, he made void the unnecessary restrictions that would be placed on Shabbat by the rabbis, in that it was a time made by Elohim for man to enjoy freedom in resting with Elohim and not in bondage according to the Takanot, the rabbinical decrees. There are 39 rules and regulations made by the rabbis dictating what you can and you cannot do on Shabbat. To say that you cannot turn on a light switch is ridiculous. To say that you can't turn on the stove is ridiculous. To go outside and gather wood and sit there and do this, yes, that's work. But they make the most ridiculous thing. You can't walk more than 1,000 feet on Shabbat. You can't carry anything on Shabbat. They wear their talis to Shabbat. Getting dressed is work. How do you get around that? In the hotels in Israel, on Shabbat, Erev Shabbat, they have the toilet paper already they have it removed from the roll and prepared so that you don't even have to pull it off the roll.
That's crazy.
Do we understand what we're getting at? We have taken something that means finding time to spend with Elohim, a special time, and turned it into bondage where we're freaking out about, oh my gosh, I didn't turn on the slow cooker for the Holland, and there's 3 stars in the sky. I can't turn it on now. We're going to have to eat raw carrots and raw meat because the Holland's not going to cook. Do we see how ludicrous this is? But anyway, the story there is, and it came to pass that he went through the wheat fields on the Sabbath day, and his Talmudim began as they went to pluck the kernels of wheat. And the Pharisees said unto him, Behold, why do they on the Sabbath day do that which is not lawful to do? And he said to them, Have you never read what David did when he had need and was hungry, he and they that were with him, how they went into the house of Yahweh in the days of Abiathar the high priest, and did eat the showbread, which is not lawful to eat but for the priests, and gave also to them which were with him. And he said unto them, The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is master also of the Sabbath. Let's consider this. Yahweh shared, and he still shares, the bread with his beloved. David means beloved. We are his beloved. They were going through the wheat fields, taking the kernels of grain, that they were taking the nourishment of the bread, the thing that makes up the bread, and eating it on the Sabbath day. That's what we should do. They were doing what was right. David, his beloved, Yahweh shared the thing that belonged to the priests with David and the people with him. He provided for David, who was hungry, and he provided bread. The same way that on Shabbat he provides us who are hungry for the spiritual food that we need to take the time to sit down and eat of the bread of life. We sit down on Shabbat and we read Torah. We take time to fix our wonderful tea and have our little snacks, and we sit down in our chair, we get comfortable, and we sit back, and we get comfortable, we cross our legs, and we take our tea, and we sip our tea, and say, Elohim, here I am. I've had a really difficult week. I've had a great week. Whatever I want to say, I'm going to speak it out loud. I'm going to lay it all down for my Elohim. I'm going to have a conversation with Elohim. And tell him how my week was, because I am walking with my Elohim in the breeze of the day in Shabbat, because this is what Elohim and Adam did in the garden. They walked together. They had conversations together. Elohim taught him. That's Shabbat. There's no bondage in Shabbat. Therefore, the Son of Man is master also of the Sabbath. This is a very important point, is that we are all the sons and daughters of the Adam. We have the choice. We have the choice to sit down and rest on Shabbat according to Torah or not. The choice is ours. But it's nothing about bondage. Okay? So we find the commandments spoken by the voice of Yahweh, who is Elohim, concerning Shabbat, as Shemot 20, verses 7 through 10. And Elohim says, right after he finishes talking about the importance of his name, he talks about Shabbat. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it set apart. Remember to take and put time aside for me on the seventh day. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath unto Yahweh Elohecha. He's talking to the children of Israel, but Elohecha means your, because he's talking to everybody, but Elohecha means specifically, yes, I'm addressing the group, but I'm talking to you, and to you. I'm having a one-on-one conversation with you while I'm addressing everybody at the same time. This is an amazing concept. This is a Sabbath unto Yahweh Elohecha. It belongs to him. In it you shall do no manner of work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates. Well, by gosh, by golly, the rabbis are right. We have to make rules for each one of these things. What is he saying? He's saying, put all of these things out of your mind. Spend time with me, and don't worry about all these other things. Put these things out of your mind. Take this time to spend it with me. And we talk about our conversation with Elohim. We have a conversation. Do we want to bring some of these things on Shabbat? We can bring these things up on Shabbat, but we have time for prayer during the week. This type of prayer that we're talking about is called Hitbodedut. It's a type of prayer where you speak in your own language and you have a conversation with Elohim to where your ears open up and you're able to hear what Elohim is telling you for guidance. But he's saying, don't allow yourself to be stressed out, wigged out, freaked out by everything that's going on around you. Take time to enter into Eden, where the only responsibility you have is naming the things of my creation, eating from the tree of life. And don't worry about eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is what this is saying. Don't worry about all that stuff. Okay? For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart. And this is something that he goes on to talk about, that if I did it in 6 days and I rested, then I'm giving you a commandment to rest, because I know that you as humankind will not take any time off for yourself if I don't command you to do it. So we see then that Shabbat, the Sabbath of Yahweh Elohim, is on the seventh day. This was established and decreed by Yahweh Elohim. Now, according to Webster's dictionary, Sabbath means the seventh day from Friday to Saturday, according to the Jewish scriptures. It also goes on to say that the Christians changed it to the first day, which was Sunday, not in accordance to Scripture, however. If Yahshua said that redemption, deliverance, and restoration was of the Jews at John 4:22, then it should be clear that the word of Elohim, his Torah, the scriptures of the Jews, hold precedent as they contain the direct commandments of Yahweh Elohim. Okay? So we've established, hopefully, that Yahweh gave us the commandments, Yahshua reinforced the commandments, and other than them two, nobody can tell us otherwise. Nobody can change it. The Aramaic of Hebrew 4:9, written by Paul, says this: "It is therefore the duty of the people of Elohim to keep the Sabbath." So what caused the change from what Torah says to the iniquity of today's Sunday's day of rest? We first look at the beginning of what is known as antinomianism. Antinomianism. It's a big word to get clear answers. Antinomianism is the idea that salvation, now salvation as a whole is another false doctrine of the church that we'll talk about some other time, but salvation is by faith and by divine grace alone, and that the saved are no longer bound to the law of Moses. This is antinomianism. Okay? This ideology began to find its root in Antioch shortly after the death of Paul. Paul died in 66, so they say. In 98 CE, the first bishop of Antioch was named Ignatius.